The Xfinity Series, the Cup Series, all head to Darlington this weekend, and we get you ready from a betting perspective next on the NASCAR Betting Preview Show. Car Betting Preview Show as our Twitter audience is filing in as we speak. We got the boys up here on YouTube, so if you're joining us on YouTube, thank you. If you're joining us on Twitter Spaces, thank you as well. Looking forward to diving in deep this evening as we tackle Darlington content from Xfinity to the Cup Series and everything in between. So I'm really excited about this weekend. So with Daytona in the rear view, which was a wild Daytona, and there's a lot of stuff still coming out about Ryan Preece's accident and the results there. So it was a wild weekend, but now the playoffs are here. So really looking forward to diving into the playoffs. The NASCAR Betting Preview Show is presented by Atlas Hair. Atlas is an elite line of hairstyling products with cologne fragrances. So get started today at atlashair.com. Use the promo code NASCAR for 20% off your entire order. That's atlashair.com, ATLASHAIR.com. For those watching on YouTube, again, welcome in. Make sure you interact with us. Shoot us a couple comments. Make sure you like, subscribe to the NASCAR Betting Preview Show Twitter accounts and all the gentlemen that are up here this evening. Also, In Between Media, they are partnering with us here and powering the broadcast here on YouTube. So make sure you download, you like, you subscribe, all that support to them as well. And the NASCAR Betting Preview Show Premium Discord is live. For any information, make sure you send me a DM at Yoder _. We'll get you connected. We had an awesome weekend this past weekend with trucks, Xfinity Cup, everything in between. So a lot of fun stuff going on there. I want to welcome onto the panel. If you are new, here is who you have on the show here tonight. Phil of the Full Tank with Phil podcast, Mark, a.k.a. SKYBOX NASCAR, the host of the Lay and Coin Pod, host of Through the Gears podcast, in partnership with Front Stretch, and we'll get to a guest here in just a second. I'll tease that. So Phil, you dropped a podcast this morning. Always enjoy that. I don't know how you do so many podcasts solo where they're over an hour. I can't do that. So always props to you. But how you feeling going into the NASCAR playoff weekend?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know. Reflecting on that, maybe I'm a bit of a psychopath. I'm not sure, but or a narcissist, who knows, but feeling good. Came out of Daytona pretty good. I had a good stretch of head-to-heads. We went undefeated, 3-0 in the head-to-heads that we placed going into the weekend, so felt really good coming out of that. Hit a little tiny bet on Buescher, which was good. So yeah, feeling good to survive that, and it was a fun time. So now we have another night race, which I'm always pumped about. And I think, just talking with these guys before the show and seeing people's thoughts on Twitter, this seems to be like a lot of people's favorite weekend, or it's up there, like top 3, top 5. So crown jewel race, looking forward to talking shop about it.
So, Mark, I'm going to kick it over to you next. You had an eventful weekend. You were down in Daytona, so you were present for the race there. You got a 9 that you etched into your chest there with your chest hair. Is that still there? Show the people. Show the YouTube audience. Exclusive for the YouTube audience. Are you going to make that into an 8, for Kyle Busch this weekend? Will you do that?
I wasn't going to. However, we recorded Lane Coin last night, and there may or may not have been a Kyle Busch ticket 12-1 thrown around. So still to be determined. I got a wedding Friday night and flying to New York City on Saturday. So I would love nothing more than to be in Times Square with just a big old Kyle Busch number 8, when NASCAR's down in the Southern 500 at Darlington. So I also got my ass kicked betting at Daytona. I am a crisp 0-49 in the Cup Series at Daytona. And, I had a great time. Definitely won the beer drinking competition that I had with myself and my cooler.
Congrats.
And had a wonderful time at Daytona. Once again, if you guys haven't been, you have to go. It's a non-negotiable. You must go to Daytona to experience a race. And we're following it up with another absolute banger of a race. So looking forward to Darlington as I do every year. So let's rock.
Well, I love that. I thought that was really cool that you were doing that. And obviously you posted a picture or video, I should say, and all the fans that are taking pictures of your body hair, if you will. So what a world you live in, my friend. I'm sure your mom is so proud as she's watching her little boy, grow up and do all that at Daytona. So let's do this. Let's welcome our guest this evening, and somebody that is very familiar with the program. He is the CEO of WinTheRace.info, owner of the True Performance Ranks, a friend to many, and extending his all-time guest appearance with 6, Ryan Stevens. Ryan, how are you?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I always look forward to coming on here with you guys. It's just a great time. And like you were saying, this is just such an exciting week. I love what they did with the Xfinity series too. There's such a loaded field, kind of gets everyone pumped up. It's just going to be an exciting race weekend all the way around. So yeah, I'm very excited. Mark, I'll tell you what, I guarantee we can get you to go 1-89 in Daytona bets at the 500, baby. You just bet all 40 drivers.
Let's go.
Get you on the board.
There you go. You're bound to have somebody win, or if a situation like Pocono happens again, you might have 2 winners. So you might even enhance your odds there a little bit. So Ryan, looking forward to chatting with you and hearing more about maybe some of the things that you have going on with Win the Race. And actually, why don't we just tee that up? How can the people, as they're getting ready here to listen, how can they kind of get in tune with what you got going on and everything at WinTheRace.info?
It's pretty exciting right now because I just hired Greg Mathern. He's a great NASCAR bettor, great NASCAR mind. When I started the site, I know what my strengths are. Betting, I mean, I've had betting legal in New York for a year and a half. It's not really, I love doing it, and I've had a good year doing it, but, I'm more like the DFS guy. So I wanted to bring in someone where, they could play to their strengths there. So I'm glad Greg already put some great bets in the Discord for everybody. But it's WinTheRace.info. It's betting. It's data. It's DFS. It's everything NASCAR related. So be a lot of fun. Joe Schroeder and I don't know if people are familiar with him or not, but you will be. If you play DFS, you definitely are. If you're looking toward the top of leaderboards, we're running simulations now. So we're simming races 10,000 times and getting results. And now, so we have some machine learning coming into our odds and fair market value and things like that. So I'll talk more about that as we get into these plays tonight.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate you pointing that out. So good opportunity for anybody listening now, as you maybe do double duty, right? Kind of go check out WinTheRace.info, get involved with everything Ryan's doing and tune into what we're saying here tonight. So let's do this. Let's go over the show outline real quick. Then I'm going to dive into a few things. So it's going to go over like this: track, facts, and data from Darlington. We want to hear what the guys have to say from their favorite head-to-heads. I want to hear finishing positions, props, and outrights, and then get to you, the listener, questions as well. So the Southern 500, a very historic event for the NASCAR Cup Series and NASCAR in general. So this is always a fun weekend for many, especially gamblers, because we have a long race, we have high tire wear, we have different elements where we feel like we have a little bit more control than some of those other weeks throughout the year. So Darlington, stage 1 will look like this: 115 laps in the first stage, 115 in the second stage. Then that final stage will be 137 laps. On Saturday at 12:30, practice and qualifying will begin. And then Sunday, the race at 6 p.m., which is, again, going to be a long race, one of the longest races of the year. We'll get probably close to 10, 11 o'clock. So make sure you're sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying that. Couple track trends and some history here. Does qualifying matter? Well, in fact, it does. 4 of the last 5 winners have won from the top 5 starting position. Eric, who, he's won Eric Jones, that is one of the guys who was not in the playoffs last year, stole the show by pulling off the upset. You're going to hear a lot about the playoff drivers, 16 in fact there are, and then some of the other drivers as well that kind of get swept under the rug. Well, Eric Jones, who runs well here, and I'm sure his name will come up a time or two tonight. He pulled off the upset last year. Chevy has now won the last 2 races at Darlington. They won with William Byron back in May, and then they won last year with Eric Jones. So some of those stats are all brought to you apart by Eric_Race Review on Twitter. So make sure you support him. Track comparisons. And Phil, I thought you said this well on your show. Darlington is its own animal. It's tough to comp this track. There's a few out there, obviously a high tire wear configuration. But the one thing I want to point out is a Goodyear, the tire combination that we have this week. So Cup Series teams will run the same tire setup at Homestead later in the playoffs. So kind of jot that down for your notes later in the season. The right side tire code has also been run, and there's a different left side tire code that was at Auto Club, Kansas, Vegas, Nashville, and Pocono earlier this year. So these teams have a good grasp of what is about to happen. Phil, I'm going to start with you and open up the head-to-head market first. So where have you been able to find a betting edge in this specific market?
Yeah, well, I will start with a name that you mentioned, and it didn't take very long for us to talk about him. And this is Eric Jones. I am sick and tired of looking at stats that are being populated this year and seeing Eric Jones's name pop up. He's the top 5 in this stat, top 10 in this stat, and trying to, use that to play Eric Jones in the 2023 season. I'm done with it. I'm done. And I knew going into Darlington, he was going to be a topic. And so before the odds came out, I just kind of said to myself, like, you know what? I'm taking blind. Like, whoever he's up against in a head-to-head matchup, I'm going to take the other guy. And so on Caesars, you can get Ty Gibbs minus 120. And look, I get it. Jones has had success here, but the point that I'm trying to make is it's just not correlating to 2023. No matter how we want to force that square peg into a round hole, like, it just hasn't worked for the most part. So you look at earlier this season, he finished 25th, and where he's been fast last year, he just hasn't shown it this year. So you look at Gibbs, he finished like mid-teens this year. I think it was like 16th or 15th. And yeah, I mean, you're kind of grasping at straws when you're trying to comp Gibbs a little bit because he's a rookie. And you said it, like, I'm treating Darlington as a unique track, but when you are looking for something more, I'm a disciple of the Ryans, the Ryan we have on the show and Ryan at iFantasy Race. So he's got the secondary comps as Auto Club, Homestead, and Dover. So if you look at those tracks within the last 2 years, Gibbs is running mid-teens in all of those races. And then so far this year on those 3 tracks that we've been to so far, he's 3-0 head-to-head against Jones, and he hasn't finished worse than 16th. So I think you can assume you're going to get a mid-teens run from Gibbs, and I think that Jones is going to let you down. So I like the minus 120 over Gibbs over Jones this week.
Okay, so you like that minus money there. And I knew Jones' name was going to come up, so I'm glad that we were able to talk about it. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see at the bottom part of the portion of the broadcast, you'll see the ticker going across the bottom where it does have all the guys' favorite plays, including Ryan's, here in just a minute. So, Mark, I'm going to kick it over to you from a head-to-head perspective. Where have you found value this weekend heading into Darlington?
This may shock just about everybody, but I'm going to the same well that Phil's going to, and that's Ty Gibbs over Eric Jones. Now, in my perspective, this goes along the same lines as what Phil was talking about last week at Daytona, find the guys you want to fade. Well, Eric Jones is that guy. I am fading Eric Jones. I want nothing to do with Eric Jones. I understand he won last year. Completely different team here in 2023. Phil rattled off the stats. The Chevy support is no longer. The team has just absolutely struggled. Phil said at 25th at Darlington 1. He had in the race that he did not win out of the last 3, he had an NLD speed of 26th and 25th. So like Phil said, Ty Gibbs, mid-teens guy. I think the upside of Ty Gibbs as a top 10 is 7th to 8th. That's where I like Ty Gibbs. I don't think Eric Jones has a chance in hell to finish in the top 10. And I expect him to be, 20th or 30th. So 20th to 30th. And when you look at these two organizations, there's one organization that is competing for wins, and the 54 team is specifically competing for top 5s and top 10s. And the other organization and car is competing straight up for top 20s. If they finish in the top 20, they are ecstatic, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. I am all over Ty Gibbs. I think, I do think he's a top 10 car. I think he's 12th to 15th at worst. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Eric Jones. Eric Jones' upside to be a top 10 car. I will say, since me and Phil had the same matchup, another honorable mention that I had was Kevin Harvick minus 130 over Blaney. Just a little nugget. Aside from the car catching on fire with Harvick last year, he's got a 4th and a 2nd in the last 3 at Daytona, Darlington, and Ryan Blaney's first career top 10 at Darlington was last year. So, or maybe it was earlier this year. I just think, Kevin Harvick's car doesn't catch on fire, and he mops the floor with Ryan Blaney, and at minus 130 is a hellacious number. So there's a little nugget for you.
So, Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. But before you give your favorite head-to-head, I'm curious, because you have all these guys ranked. Where do Gibbs and Jones rank on your big board?
I have Gibbs ahead, but, it's not something that I'm rushing out to bet, only because
Ryan,
you can't
unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. There we go.
All good.
So, I got to get used to that. I'm sorry with the YouTube thing now. I have Gibbs ahead of Jones. It's not something that I ran out to bet, but it's something that, in our simulations does show Gibbs on top. So, it's true. I mean, it's not the same equipment at all that these guys are running. Gibbs has been faster all year long. Jones has popped a little bit recently, but no, I'm on Gibbs in that matchup.
Okay, so you're on Gibbs there. Where have you been able to find a betting edge in the head-to-head market this week?
Man, so this might shock some people, but my head-to-head that I really like is on Caesars as well, and it's Stenhouse minus 110 over McDowell.
Okay.
Stenhouse has beaten McDowell at Auto Club, Las Vegas, Kansas, Darlington, Charlotte, pretty much any size track with some decent tire wear that we've had. And if you look at all of the intermediate tracks, like I know some people threw in, Dover, things like that. The only time Stenhouse has lost to McDowell in this package this year was at Gateway. And that's when Stenhouse ran 95% of his 200. He almost ran the whole race, and he was 95% of the time he was running in the top 15. I had him as the 12th best car, and I had McDowell as the 21st best car. So these guys, to me, in this package, I mean, I think the lines are what they are, and Stenhouse is a dog just because of recency bias. And I think there's a big difference between recency bias and current form. McDowell has current form specifically at one track type, which are road courses, in a completely different package. He doesn't have recent form in this package. So yeah, I don't know. I think you're getting minus 110 because of recency bias. So I'm on that one.
Okay. So I get that. That's interesting head-to-head there. You said that's available on Caesars. And when we go back to the Gibbs conversation, MW here on YouTube, and I'm curious, I see him in the Twitter spaces, curious if this is Matt Winters or not. But he says about Gibbs pit crew now being on the 20 car. That news broke yesterday. Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was muting on both forums here. So I just wanted to reiterate, I mean, minus 110, I was talking about this on the podcast last night, and one of the reasons why I liked it was because of the fact that if you look at Stenhouse, he's unloaded fast. He's started in pretty good positions on the 3 tracks specifically that I was looking at. His average starting position was 4.7. That was first compared to everyone that has more than one start. And McDowell's like deep in the 20s, like 25th. So that minus 110 number, I think the reason that bet is exciting is because if that were to play out again, you're not going to see that number anymore. It's going to be pretty astronomical if he's starting in the top 10, top 5, and McDowell's way back in the shit. So that was the other reasons why I was into that too.
I like the reasoning there. I think good conversations were definitely had. And I'm curious from anybody listening on Twitter or watching on YouTube, put it down in the messaging column down below in the bottom right on Twitter and in the comments here on YouTube. What's your favorite head-to-head? Where have you found a betting edge this weekend? Be curious to hear that. Let's move into the second market, the finishing position props. And Mark, I'm going to kick it off with you first. Curious to hear, where are you taking the people? Top 3, 5, 10, or you found something else maybe that's kind of worth laying a little coin on?
We're heading straight to the top 10 market. I understand that I straight up abuse the top 10 market. Maybe the top 10 market abuses me, but usually I'm like the minus 160, minus 150 guy that absolutely has no business not finishing in the top 10. Well, this time I'm on the other side, and that's Bubba Wallace, top 10, plus 130. That's playoff driver Bubba Wallace to you. And I don't think the books are respecting him this week. I would have thought he'd be 20-1, 22-1 at the worst, something like that. He's floating around at 30-1. I believe that's still available. I'm not totally in bed with Bubba Wallace outright. I'm not crazy about it. I'm not going to hate on a ticket if you got one. But I absolutely am crazy about top 10 at plus money and maybe even a top 5. I believe the number's around 4-1. That's juicy. He hit that in the spring. Our buddy Highline has him 5th in the model this week. And in the last three Darlington races, 2 last year, 1 this year, he's 4th in average speed. And he's also coming off back-to-back top 10s at Darlington. So I expect Bubba Wallace to unload fast. We've seen him come out. I know it's not apples to apples, but Bubba Wallace has had great speed at certain intermediates, and I expect him to run up front, unload fast, and I expect the entire Toyota camp to do as well.
Okay, so you're on Bubba Wallace plus 130, top 10. And Phil, you mentioned on your podcast about Bubba Wallace and saying, hey, we got to start taking advantage of this guy's consistency. He's been running well here as of late, having a really good season. Time to really take this driver serious. So where are you leading the people when it comes
to
the position market?
I can't disagree with that. I'm into that as well. The place that I'm going this week is somebody that actually Mark mentioned earlier in a head-to-head, and this is Kevin Harvick. And I'm going top 5. The top 10 number, I was kind of hoping to see I could get it a little bit better. The best I see in Pennsylvania is like minus 155. I would rather go with plus 235. You can get that on Bet Rivers, and if you're in a state with Bet 365, I think it's even better than that. So you mentioned the fire, Mark, that Harvick had, and that being such a bad finish. If you're looking at the last 3 starts at Darlington since the next gen car came around, that is definitely skewing the numbers a little bit. But if you go back a ways, last 10 races at Darlington, you really see where Harvick has thrived, and you see that this is a racetrack that he loves. 2 wins and 8 top 5s in that time span, 9 top 10s. So that fire obviously was the outlier. And I mean, think about that, like 10 races, that's over the span of like 5 years where he's been up, years where he's been down. And he's one of those guys where he's able to overcome deficits in speed that the team has and do well at the tracks that he's been consistent at in his career. And I think Darlington is clearly speaking to that. So yeah, typically I'm a top 10 guy more than anything, but plus 235 for somebody who's done it 80% of the time in the last 10 races at this racetrack. I'm into it. I mean, Mark called it out, a 4th and a 2nd. He was able to kind of survive some of that craziness in the first race there, found himself on the front row, had a chance to win that thing. So it's just like, that's the kind of guy he is at this racetrack. So looking at the last 8 races on the quote unquote comp tracks, his average finish is 1st out of everyone. That's the last 2 years. So 10.9, I mean, just really good stuff here from him. And I think it's kind of tough to find a reason not to play him in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, so you like Kevin Harvick, top 5, like you said, plus 250. I had Kevin Harvick last year, top 10, the win, the whole 9 yards. Was still heartbroken about that when I hear about the fire. So, Ryan, I'm going to kick it over to you. Where are we going from a finishing position prop?
So this one's a little thin. It's at plus 135 at Rivers. It's William Byron, top 5. Basically, just in the 6 races that I was looking at, basically all the next gen Darlington races, and then this year's Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte. Only 2 drivers have ran over 50% of their laps inside the top 5, and Byron leads that by a large margin at 71.84%. He's got 4 top 5s in those 6 races with 2 wins, and only Truex has a better average running position in those races. And if you look at all the tracks that have used this tire code on both tires, Byron has the best average finish, period. And then, like, the other thing about this being plus 135 doesn't sound great, but you look at what the other favorites are, and then you look at how Byron has practiced and qualified on these tracks. 7 intermediate tracks they've practiced and qualified on. He's won 2 poles. He's made the final round in 7 out of 7. I think he's made the top 5 in 5 out of 7 of those. Our simulations had it fair at plus 126. So again, like a little bit of value here. And I think that the number, could be toast after practice and qualifying. So big on Byron. No, I mean, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a quick one, but it's like, I just said all that about Byron, and then Byron's 8-1. So I just think when you look at the odds board, the 2 that stuck out to me as, I guess I understand why Truex is the favorite. I love Truex as well. But Hamlin and Byron at 8-1, those 2 really stuck out to me. So, I mean, I know I just talked about Byron. I guess I'll stick with him for all of those reasons. And then, we talk about pit crews, so if we want to have a tiebreaker between the 2, I have Byron ranked higher anyways, but if we have a tiebreaker between the 2, pit crew, Byron's pit crew has been just insanely awesome all year long, putting them out front, giving them a chance to win. So yeah, man, I just think when you look at the top of the board, 8-1 stuck out to me, and going back to what I said about qualifying too, could just be wiped out if he looks fast and qualifies in the top 3. So
I think an 8-1 number on a guy like that is something that we should obviously bet within your means and bet responsibly with when you're doing your process. But that's a number that does not seem short for a guy like that at all. So William Byron, you said plus 800. You mentioned a little bit there about Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex as well. But Mark, I'm going to kick it over to you. Where are we heading in the outright market?
I'm going to go halfway down. How about maybe like 40% down?
Meet in the middle.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe we'll meet in the middle. I'm going Christopher Bell 12-1, bet 365. I think his line's moved a little bit, certain places. But Highline's got him 4th in the model, 3rd in average speed over the last 3 Darlington races. He's got finishes of 6th, 5th, and 14th in the spring. However, that 14th is misleading, as Ryan from iFantasy Race would tell you. I think he had one of the fastest cars. He was one of the few cars, in my opinion, that could actually make passes, him and Larson. I think, and Truex could have been back in traffic and made passes. Also got the new pit crew. Okay. And I like this 12-1 corridor, this 10-1 to 16-1 corridor this early in the week. And I'm essentially what I'm doing is I'm riding this Joe Gibbs heater. I'm riding this Toyota heater. I'm riding. I think the cars that were fast at Darlington 1 are going to show up. Not all of them, but I think the fast ones are going to show up. The guys that have been fast all year, and I think Christopher Bell has been flying under the radar. His only win is Bristol Dirt. And if we know anything about him, last year in the playoffs, he walked off a couple. That's not going to happen this year. Christopher Bell is going to hit him hot and heavy and secure his spot in the next round. So I like the number here. I probably wouldn't go any lower than 10. I definitely would not go any lower than 10 on Christopher Bell. Anything double digits I like, and love his speed, and a 6th and a 5th place finish. While it's not winning, anything can happen at Darlington late in the race, as we saw in the spring. So I like C Bell this week.
Well, the Sports Keg, who's listening on Twitter and YouTube, says that he likes Bell as well. So you're in good company there. What about you, Phil? Close us out here with the outright market. Where are we headed? And you are 30 seconds from being on the clock in your NFL draft.
That is right. 6 seconds away from my fantasy draft kicking off. And so I will bail out here in a little bit. But I was just looking for value. The guys at the top of the board make sense. I mean, I think we can all make a case for Larson and Truex, but when I was looking at it, they dominated the races recently and they just haven't gotten the finishes. And that's kind of scary to me when you're taking them, 5-1 or plus 450 or whatever they were. So my thought process was, how can I find some value? I'm willing to kind of dive a little bit deeper. I love the Hamlin and Byron play. I love the Seabell for all of those reasons. I'm into those guys. I'll go a little bit further down and make a case for someone, and that's Brad Keselowski, 16-1 on DraftKings. And to me, it was just like good enough value for someone where he shows up in the stats. Darlington for him is a great track. Last 10 races, he's got a win, 4 top 5, 6 top 10s. He's 4th in average finish. And then, you're looking at the last 3 specifically in the next gen. He wrecked in the spring, 2022. That kind of throws off his numbers, but 7th and 4th place finishes since then. Last 8 comp tracks, 14.0, but 2023, he's really kind of stepped it up, as we've seen with RFK Racing. 7th, 8th, and 4th on those tracks that I mentioned earlier so far this year. And you can make a case that Darlington is really his strongest track of if you're trying to correlate Darlington, anything else. He really shines there more than anything else. So this season, though, he's 3 for 3 for a top 10, and his top 5 was at Darlington. So you have that plus the RFK momentum. It just seems like, when is he going to get that win? I would, be beside myself if I missed out on it, at a race like this, heading into the playoffs when that team has so much momentum. So 16-1 for the 6 car.
There's been nobody better over the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and I believe it is even 7 weeks. I wish I had my sheet pulled up than Brad Keselowski with his finishes. So you're definitely getting a guy right now. You're trying to get invested in him while he's hot. How about we kick it over to the last segment here? Then Phil, I'll let you go. So this is the best bet, best value, the money segment, if you will, presented by NASCAR Money. So where are we going, Phil, from a best bet perspective?
Yeah, I had a funny, I like to kind of have a little fun in this section, and saw something that kind of piqued my interest. So that was on Caesars. They let you do those exactas and the Quinellas, right?
Yep.
And, I know our guy Mark from Mississippi loves those. I have never been successful in any of those, but the any other option was plus 120. So I started like scrolling through, like looking to see like who they actually have in there and who they don't. Probably need a spreadsheet to be able to like really dive deep. But what I found was there are some, drivers, like this is the bet that if you want kind of like chaos, if you want like the non-playoff drivers to step up, if you want where did that guy come from, that's the bet, because 3 of the last 6 years, or 3 of the last 6 races rather, at Darlington had a 1-2 finish of a combination that's not listed. And so you throw in a Eric Jones coming out of nowhere. You throw in an Austin Dillon finishing second. Logano and Reddick aren't even listed in there, and they were finishing 1-2. So you can scroll through and find those. I just think that's kind of a cheer for chaos type of situation there, and we'll see what happens. So that's the bet I'll throw out there to have a little fun.
Okay, I like fun. I like chaos. I like all those things. Go listen to the Full Tank with Phil podcast, because you even laid out a few that include NASCAR playoff drivers that are currently in the playoffs that were not listed. So you're getting a little bit of everything. Phil, give the people, before you go, because I know you're probably on the clock or you're already drafted, and I'll let you get out of here. Give the people 2 of your favorite college football win totals. I know your sheet is right above your eyeballs, so give the people 2 of your favorite win totals going into the season, because week 1 is this Saturday.
So I'm currently on the clock right now. Give me 1 second.
Who'd you take?
I just drafted Nick Chubb 9th overall. I feel like that's a pretty good steal according to my calculations here. But so yeah, win totals. I like Texas Tech over 7.5. I think they're going to have a little bit bumpy start, so don't get scared off this week in Wyoming. But the other one that seems to come up a lot is is Illinois. I know Big Ten country, you know, they 6.5, and I feel like most of the models that I've seen have them going 7 or higher. The ceiling is good for them. So those are a couple teams there that I'll throw out there to get it going. But yeah, appreciate you fellas, and I'm going to jump off, and I hope everybody has a good rest of the night and a good Labor Day weekend and win some bets.
Well, thank you, Phil. And Todd, if you didn't fall asleep yet, hopefully you didn't, maybe give us a thumbs up or 100 or whatever, depending on what you thought Phil's takes were there on Illinois and also Texas Tech. So, Phil, thanks again, as always. And make sure you guys go and listen to the Full Tank with Phil podcast. And Phil, thanks for always joining us here. And so, boys, I'm going to kick it over to Mark next. Where are we going when it comes to a best bet, best value portion here?
I don't know if there's anything best about what I'm about to blurt out of my mouth. But Phil just said it. I'm going to have a little fun here. I just use this opportunity for another prop or something. But I'm going Harrison Burton top 4 at 75-1. This opened at over 100-1. It is now down to 75-1 on Caesars. But Darlington is by far his best track. In the spring, he had 11th, 12th place car. He finished 6th. Little attrition. But if we look past that, if we look at both the races last year, he finished 14th and 21st. I would say that's better than Harrison Burton's average finish at every other track. It's 13.6 at Darlington. So I'm going to throw a few shekels here. Nothing serious, nothing crazy. But Harrison Burton top 4. I don't mind top 10 at 7-1. But if you're going to throw a couple zeros on the end and give me 75-1, yeah, I'll take that.
Okay, so I like that. What about you, Ryan? And Ryan, thanks again for joining us, obviously. But what about you? I'll let you close out this portion here.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It's funny he talked about that because I did sprinkle a little on El Marola top 4 at 50-1 just for shits too. So we showed a little value on that. But for my best bet, and this might not be popular if you're into what's happened recently, but I'm taking Harvick minus 120 over Buescher. In the 6 races, like I sound like a broken record probably, but in the 6 races I'm looking at, the Darlington races, Vegas, Kansas, Charlotte, Harvick's ran over 38% of his laps inside the top 10. Buescher has not done that 10% of the time. And if you look at this year only, Harvick's ran almost 45% of his laps inside the top 10 at Vegas, Kansas, Darlington, Charlotte, and Buescher only 14%. So Harvick's running about 7 places higher, average running position in those races. Buescher has no top 5s at Darlington. He's finished inside the top 10 only a quarter of the time, while Harvick, as we all know, is an absolute beast here. He's top 5 over 45% of the time in his career and top 10 over 61% of the time. Our simulations had this closer to minus 175 for Harvick. So while it's minus 120, I'm all over this.
Okay, so good number there. Where'd you find that again?
That I wrote down. Sorry,
that's okay.
I think it's on Caesars. I thought I wrote it on my notes here, but I'm pretty sure it was on Caesars.
Okay, so on Caesars there, and yeah,
Caesars or DraftKings. It was one of the two.
All right, so if you're, if you have those books available to you, go check on one of those and, check out the lines there. So let's do this. I'm going to move over to the YouTube side, or sorry, the Twitter Spaces side. We're going to move into the listener questions portion here of the show. So if you've been watching us on YouTube, thank you so much. Again, make sure that you not only are subscribed to everybody here, but you also are, download and subscribe to the In Between Media and all the outlets there, fantasy football, everything NASCAR they have going on. So we're going to move over to Twitter Spaces exclusively for the listening portion of the show. So if you have a question, hit that request button. We'll get you up here to talk. And again, guys, thank you from the YouTube side. So Twitter Spaces audience, looking at you all here tonight. We have a big race this weekend. So what is some of your takes? What did you think about what the guys said and where we headed from a betting standpoint? Dakota, I see you joining the chat here. We just talked about Kevin Harvick at length. So good to see you as always. But anybody, Mark in Mississippi, I know you have. And say anything, let us know. But, Ryan, one question I have before anybody does so is, this weekend is massive. Are you also looking at things from an Xfinity betting standpoint as well?
I haven't dove into that as much as I'd like to. Yeah, that's kind of what I plan on doing tomorrow. So I don't want to.